If you look up this case online, you'll see one version of events repeated over and over. A young girl leaves a hangout spot to walk home, takes a cut-through trail, and never makes it back. Her body is later found in a nearby ditch, and a witness claims they saw a man follow her into the woods. That's the story I first read, and it's the one that most people believe. But in recent years, Donna's cousins have worked to unravel the truth, and what they've uncovered shows that very little in this case is what it seems. They've tracked down old friends, spoken with townspeople and law enforcement, and carried out their own boots-on-the-ground investigation. One name that comes up repeatedly is one you may recognize from the Netflix documentary Making a Murderer. It's a violent rapist who Donna was acquainted with and lived in the area at the time she was killed. For this episode, I sat down with 3 of Donna's cousins who share what they've learned and separate out fact from fiction. This year marks 50 years since her murder, and her family is not giving up because they believe the answers are still out there and that they're hidden in this small town. I'm your host, Megan, and each week on A Simpler Time True Crime, I cover older unsolved cases and challenge the idea that a simpler time means a safer time. This week, I'm bringing to you the unsolved murder of Donna Emmel.
Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
Before I get started today, I wanted to tell you about the voices you're going to hear in helping me share Donna's case. I had the privilege of talking with 3 of Donna's cousins. The first is Stephanie Bryant, who has led the charge to push for answers in Donna's case. She was also sitting with her mother, Beverly, who is Donna's first cousin and was her best friend. We were also joined by cousin Robert Lewis. Through family genealogy work, Robert found out he was Stephanie's cousin a few years back, and when they realized they both had been looking for answers in their cousin Donna's case, they joined forces and compared notes.
But once I found out we were related, it kind of put a little something in me. And then when I came across some of Stephanie's posts, and I listened to a previous podcast that Stephanie and Beverly were on, and so I reached out. I reached out to Stephanie one day and said, hey, believe it or not, we're actually cousins and I would like to get involved. And we just kind of hit the ground running.
And what a duo they have been. I'm so thankful that they agreed to join me and trusted me not only in telling Donna's story, but also in communicating what they're looking for from you as listeners to help with Donna's case. So let's get to it. It was June 16th, 1975, and 15-year-old Donna Emmel was at a local hangout spot. The place was called Grace's Grill, and it was somewhere she often went since she moved to the small town of Newport, North Carolina, months prior. Donna had been born in the nearby city of Havelock, North Carolina, and in the November prior, she had relocated to the town of Newport with her mom, Emily, and her siblings. Donna was born into a military family, and Havelock is anchored by the Marine Corps Air Station at Cherry Point, one of the largest Marine air stations in the world. It's very much a military town with families constantly coming and going as service members are stationed and transferred. The city grew up around the base, so the community is built on supporting military life, with schools, housing, and businesses catering to that population. Donna did not have a close relationship with her father, and in recent years, her father had left the family and moved away. Emily moved herself and her 4 children to the nearby town of Newport, which was closer to family, and they moved into a house on, believe it or not, Easy Street. Here's Robert talking a bit about what Newport was like in 1975. Robert's audio breaks up a little here at the beginning of this episode, but hang in there because it gets better. And his perspective is important because he actually grew up right in that neighborhood and was there when all of this happened.
In 1975, Newport would have been, it's still small, but it would have been smaller than, probably talking no more than 12 to 1,500 residents. It was run by a few individuals. Some are still around, probably in their 90s. Some are deceased. Some of the town characters have streets named after them to this day. Much lower crime back then.
Here's Stephanie.
That the way you see Newport now, like if you were to look at a map, Newport was a highway and it was woods. The stores that are there now were not there then. So it was a very isolated country, dark place around the area that Donna would have been. I think isn't there a street light out there on Howard that wasn't there before back then?
Oh yeah, Howard's. There were
Yeah.
no lights on Howard that I know of back in '75. That of course there's sidewalks and street lights and everything now.
Mm-hmm. Anything we forgot, Mom, that you can remember about Newport back then?
No, I call it a little hick town. There was nothing to it.
In 1975, Donna was the oldest at 15. She had a brother Michael, who was 14, another younger brother David, who was 10 years old, and the baby of the family, Carrie. Of the cousins I interviewed, Beverly was the one who knew Donna personally. They were, like I described, first cousins who were also like best friends. Beverly told me how Donna was somewhat of a tomboy who was kind but could also hold her own.
She was small, but she was feisty. You didn't know it unless you really made her mad. You didn't see that side of her. She was a tomboy. To my knowledge, she only ever owned one dress, and she was buried in that dress. She liked to go to movies. She liked to go to bowling alleys. She liked to, stay home. Back in the day when I knew her, she was a homebody like me. Didn't have boys around. And she was a nice girl. She was very nice. Very, very nice. Very close to her mama.
Easy Street is located next to Highway 70, separated by just a patch of woods. Highway 70 is one of the major east-west routes in North Carolina, running from the Tennessee border near Asheville all the way to the coast. On the other side of Highway 70 is 9-Foot Road. This is where Grice's Grill was located and where we pick back up on that evening of June 16, 1975. I'm first going to tell you the narrative that is out there, what you'll find if you read the linked newspaper articles I share, or if you go just Google the case. According to source material and reporting in 1975, Donna was hanging out at Grice's Grill with some friends, and this place had an arcade and pool tables, so it was a popular hangout for the younger crowd. That night, Donna had been hanging out with some friends when her mother called somewhere between 8 and 8:30 p.m. and told her to come home. Donna left and began her walk home. Now, if you strictly took the marked roads, you could take 9-Foot Road and cross over Highway 70 and then follow the road 9-Foot Road turns into and turn into the neighborhood Easy Street was on. But the fastest way was using a shortcut through the woods, one that Donna used often, and so did all the other local kids.
She grew up on, it's called Easy Street. That is a real place, Easy Street. There was across the street was a row of houses, and there was a wooded area. Those houses and the Highway 70. So she would have to walk through a neighbor's yard to enter the woods. And I would say from her front porch to the woods was probably 75 to 80 yards, maybe. And then the distance to get through the woods to the highway may have been another 75 or 80 yards. But it wouldn't have taken her very long to get from her house across the highway to Grice's Grill. I would say 5 minutes tops, even at a walk. When I was growing up, Grice's Grill had moved, and there was a convenience store there. So my friends and I would take the path to get across the highway to the convenience store. Once again, about 5 minutes is about all it took. All the neighborhood kids used that path.
So allegedly, Donna used that path, but that night Donna didn't come home. This was out of character for Donna, and Emily kept good visibility to her, so she immediately reported her missing when she didn't come home. Local law enforcement and neighborhood friends who were concerned all joined together that very night to try to help find Donna. They backtracked to Grice's Grill, and according to a newspaper article at the time that really seemed to take off and spread to other newspapers, Donna's brother was out that night and saw a man following Donna into the woods. Police scoured the woods with flashlights and walked the path she would take. They talked to friends, but ultimately they could not find Donna that evening. Now, reports differ on the timeline the following day, but sometime on the 17th, between 4 a.m., which is the approximate time the search was called off, and 12 noon, which is noted on the autopsy report as the time she was found, a couple of teens were in the woods when they heard a young girl scream. I should note this detail is actually not reported on in the local papers, but it's something that the cousins have found out in their research and seems to be told around the town.
I think it was a teenage guy and his, I don't know if his girlfriend or what, but they were in the woods that morning smoking dope, as teenagers do in June, I guess, in the woods. But they said they heard a little girl scream. And they ran to see what it was, and the girl had found the body. So these two were actually the first, they weren't adults, but they were the first, to see Donna in the ditch. And they're the ones who, I think they told the little girl, they recognized who she was.
The details of what happened next are a little fuzzy, but somehow police were called and they reported to the scene. They think that probably the little girl ran off to get help and call 911. 15-year-old Donna Emmel was dead. Some source material describes her as carefully placed in the ditch near her home, laid down almost like she was sleeping. As first responders came to the area, her brother Michael, who was 14 at the time, was inconsolable.
But the police were already there when Michael seen, because Michael ran down in the ditch to grab her, and the police told him to stop right there, that if he touched her, he would go to jail.
Donna was fully clothed, and the autopsy revealed she had been strangled to death and had not been sexually assaulted. The autopsy also revealed she didn't have any drugs or alcohol in her system that night. A little bit later, I'm going to get into the investigation more thoroughly, but for a moment, I want to skip ahead. Stephanie grew up watching the case haunt her mother Beverly and her family. She saw the longing they had for answers, while at the same time being very closed off and oftentimes not wanting to talk about the tragedy, to the media or amongst themselves. It was heartbreaking for Stephanie to see the impact it had on her Aunt Emily and Emily's other children and the ripple effect out. Still, it was a rather taboo topic. That was until Stephanie's grandmother picked up the paper one morning and Stephanie had enough.
What was it? 5 years ago, there was a reporter that did an article in the newspaper that was horrendous. And my grandmother went out on the porch to get her coffee, and the front page of that newspaper had a bloody handprint with Donna's picture on it. And in that article, it talked and kind of swayed to Aunt Emily being the one that took Donna's life, and she was going to her grave with that. She had gone to her grave with that. That kicked me in gear. That after that, I was like, nope, we're not doing this no more. If the family gets angry at me, they'll just have to be angry at me, but we're not gonna stay silent no more. And really the family got behind me. They got behind me. It was no more, we're gonna stay quiet. We went to the paper, we asked for a correction in that article, and then from there on it was just we're gonna talk to people. I went out and started talking to people from back in her childhood. I would get different names. I would go out and talk to them. Eventually, um, got in touch with the SBI, and it's just been going more forward ever since. I've just been pushing and pushing and pushing to get her name out there, get her story out there, and get people talking.
I personally saw Stephanie's advocacy, and it's what led me to reach out to her and see if she'd be interested in having me share Donna's story on the podcast. I was so glad she agreed and recruited Robert and Beverly to join us as well. So I sat down with them, and as I got into the events of that night, I relayed the story that I just mentioned of Donna's last night to ensure what I had so far was accurate. And to my surprise,
That's not accurate.
Okay.
There's some.
if your ears perked up, so did mine, and we'll pick up there after this short break.
Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
So yes, my ears perked up, and the cousins went on to tell me how there is no clear establishment that Donna ever picked up the phone that evening at Grace's Grill, or that she was immediately heading home at that time. And that's just the beginning.
In that, first of all, between Robert and I talking to many, 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 many people from that time, one of the girls that she was there with that night said that Donna had planned to go stay with her boyfriend.
Okay.
And so she had left to go home. But there are other people that also say that she received a phone call. There's other people that say that she didn't receive a phone call. There's no way to verify that she received a phone call that night that she needed to come home.
So what about her younger brother who saw a man following her into the woods?
Is the brother that they talk about in the paper was never allowed at Grice's. He was never, he was too young. That would have been David. And Donna would not have left him there. And that's coming from family, that's coming from friends, that's coming from people that hung out at Grice's. Every person that we spoke to has said that David had never gone to Grice's. He wasn't allowed to be there. He was too young. And the character of Donna, she knew better. She would not have left him behind anyway.
Well, we did a little digging on that story because, we thought, well, maybe it's a simple mistake because of the age of the children, with Donna being the oldest, and then her younger brother, Michael, was only a year younger. So I think Donna would have been 15, Michael would have been 14, and David was 10. So we said, well, maybe there was just a misunderstanding. Maybe Michael was at Grice's, which would make more sense that she would leave her 14-year-old brother. But then, once again, from interviewing law enforcement and people who were at Grice's that night, that's just not the case. She was there with friends. She was not there with either of her brothers. So, like I said, we don't know where the story came from. And that's kind of one of the misconceptions or rumors we'd like to get rid of, because that was a rumor I heard when I was growing up. So that's what I believed. And I'm sure there are probably many people still in Newport, Havelock, that area that are still under that same belief.
Another thing I learned from them is that none of that was ever actually in the police report. So the only place this story of the phone call and the brother seeing the man go into the woods, that was only just reported in a local paper. But going back to that original story that's been put out, the theory was that someone followed Donna into the woods that night, the murder took place in those woods, and that her body was placed in that ditch. But the more Beverly, Stephanie, and Robert looked into this, the less this added up. The woods were searched thoroughly that night, and there was nothing there. Where Donna's body was found was a place people would have looked, a place they know Donna's mother, Emily, did look. She simply wasn't there, which would mean that she was murdered sometime after leaving Grice's Grill, but she was either held for a period of time or her body was hidden until the search was called off in those early morning hours. And then at that time, speculation would seem that her body was moved back to where it would be found by searchers that next day, as if she had been attacked on the wooded trail.
That every first responder I have talked to swears up and down there was no body in the woods that night. The body did not appear until the following morning after the search had kind of been called off. I think the search was called off around 4 a.m. is kind of what I'm hearing from first responders. You know, of course, their memory's a little 50 years old, but 4 a.m. is about what most of them are telling me. And I believe the body was found, I mean, Beverly might can tell better on this one, maybe about 6, 7 o'clock the next morning.
No, well, the autopsy report says noon.
Okay.
So, and there's still discrepancies with that. The family believes that it was earlier.
Right.
But the first responders and the autopsy says that it was around noon. So
somewhere between 4 a.m. and noon,
she was put over there.
There's a body in the ditch. So we're not sure if she ever even entered the woods that night after she left Grice's.
Mm-hmm. She did leave Grice's. Everybody that we've spoken to, or I have spoken to, has confirmed that she did leave and get across the highway.
Okay.
But because there was no street lights there and the opening to the woods, it would have been dark in that area. She could have been taken before she even got in there. She could have got right into the path and, you know, brought right back out. Any of those things can happen, but she did make it across the highway. From what, I don't know, probably 5 to 10 people that I've spoke to have confirmed that they did see her go across the highway. The girl that she was with that night said that Donna left and went across the highway, and then she left in her car, and she feels very guilty about that because she wished now that she had just given Donna a ride home. So we do have that confirmation that she did walk across the highway to the path. And I would like to add to that too, that Aunt Emily, her mama, walked that ditch. She walked that ditch. Donna was not in that ditch. She got out there and searched for her child. So they waited until after the authorities left and I guess the area was clear before they, you know, put her in that ditch. But as Robert said, they searched the entire woods. She was nowhere in those woods. So they had her somewhere else.
So that brings to question, where was she hidden and who might have done this? Now, Stephanie was not shy. She doesn't feel like the Newport Police Department has been very helpful in solving Donna's case.
But yeah, so Newport Police Department doesn't want anything to do with any of it. So, and I don't care if you put that in there. I've made it clear, I think, online.
She even told me that once she got into Donna's case again and was talking to people in the community, she said she realized that a lot of people were hesitant to go to law enforcement with the things that they were telling her because they had already tried over the years and that they would not get callbacks from the police department, and so they were hesitant to try again. But the exception to the rule was that of former Newport Police Chief Ruff Tomlinson. He always hoped to solve Donna's case, and it bothered him that he couldn't. He unfortunately passed away in 2016, so I can't ask him any more questions. But the cousins have been able to learn a lot about Ruff's beliefs over the years and what he thought about the case. And Ruff Tomlinson used to discuss how he believed this very theory, that Donna was killed in another location and moved.
But when he would talk to us about the case, he always told us that he believed that she was murdered on 9 Foot Road and brought back. And we could never understand that until we started digging deeper and Robert spoke to the people that were out there that night searching for her. And then we come to realize, okay, now we know why he believed that, because she wasn't in the woods.
As a reminder, 9 Foot Road was the street that Grace's Grill was located on. But right across from Grace's Grill, on that same road, there was another hangout. And this one was known to have a bit of harder drugs and a rougher crowd. Donna herself was not into hard drugs, but her social circle could overlap into that territory.
I don't know if it came up with the people that Robert has talked to, but not one single person has ever said that Donna would do anything other than marijuana. She didn't that there were people that hung around the same places they hung out with, which was, I guess, a place called the Pit, which was right across from Grice's, going the other direction. That did shoot up. There was a crowd there, that did those types of drugs, but Donna was never interested in that. It's just something she wouldn't have done.
All her friends, the few that knew her in the brief time she was there, and all the people, all the young locals in and around that area that hung out in those woods, to a man and a woman, I've got a few females too, all said it was just marijuana use among the teenagers. Now, obviously, there was harder drugs available, but that was mainly for the older crowd, the military. But yes, there was some of that went over at the what we call the tar pits, is what Stephanie alluded to, which was an area just on the west side of 9 Foot Road, which is where the younger kids hung out and would do drugs, harder drugs. It was kind of if I had to describe it, it's almost like sand dunes, like a white sandy dunes. I believe maybe they had excavated the site for sand, maybe for some of the new neighborhoods, and it was kind of like a sand quarry type of place. But there was some of the holes were filled with water, which kind of made it like a beach feel. So in the autopsy where it says that she was found with sand on her,
Mm-hmm.
that would be more consistent with that area than it would be with the woods, which was basically just black dirt. There was no sand in the path. So, we may have very well been that she left Grice's and wound up over at the sand pits, and, may or may not have been where she was.
Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
She was killed.
So who was part of her social circle? Some articles discuss Donna falling into a rougher crowd, and that was the belief of her cousin Beverly. In talking to the family further, it seems like Donna was going through some typical teenage life stages where she was trying to find herself and carve out her identity. Things only fueled by moving to a new school while in high school and the shifts within her family.
Donna had 3 different lives, to be honest with you. During that time, she was trying to find herself, because the more we look into it, she had her best friends that lived in Havelock, and those friends did not know about anything that she was doing in Newport. And then when she was with my mom, they stayed at home. My mom had never gone to Grice's, so they stayed at home and just kind of, had that lifestyle. And then the group that my mom is talking about is the group that went to Grice's and, smoked weed and kind of a little bit more of the rebellious crowd, that was out there living life, getting into things. But nobody knew, like, she kept it private from all her other friends, because my mom didn't even know. You didn't even know about her going to Grice's and all that stuff. So she just kind of lived 3 different lives. You know what I mean? And she didn't share them.
One person you've heard mentioned that we should talk more about is her boyfriend at the time. Since Donna had moved to Newport within the last year, the cousins estimate that Donna and her boyfriend were only dating for a few months. But it was enough to leave an impression. For privacy purposes, I'm going to call him Mark, and I'll redact his name if it's mentioned during the audio clips. Donna and Mark first seemed to hit it off. And to the outside, they seemed like a good couple, but soon Donna began confiding in her best friend and cousin Beverly about the relationship souring and how she was not only unhappy with Mark, she was fearful of him.
She was scared of him. Said he took her down to the water and made her get on her hands and knees and beg him not to break up with her.
And and I will say, from my own talking to someone that was in Grice's, they would say that when he was with Donna, when he was around his friends, that he was very mean to Donna, that he would call her names in front of everybody. one of the girls that she was close to said that Donna was planning to break up with him.
Could Mark have lashed out at this sign of rejection? Mark's behavior was odd in the days after Donna's death and all the way through her funeral. Beverly remembers it all too well, and not only was he acting odd, he had scratches all over him.
He was sitting on the coffee table in Aunt Emily's house the next day after she died, and he was looking up at her picture, which sat on the mantle, and he kept going, "I'm sorry, Donna. I'm sorry, Donna."
Beverly told me that because it was a hot June day, Mark was wearing short sleeves, and that's where she witnessed the scratches on his arm. And Mark's mother and family were strangely inserting themselves into everything.
And the other weird thing, too, is that his mother was trying to plan Donna's funeral. Like, they came over to Aunt Emily's house and was trying to take over her funeral. Aunt Emily saw a note in Donna's casket. It was just like they just tried to like take over this whole thing pertaining to Donna. Like, why? It's just a whole weird thing.
And his daddy was in Donna's bedroom,
Putting earrings in her
jewelry box
that he said he found in car. But then, Robert, when you talked to him, didn't he say wasn't driving at that time?
That's what he said, yes.
He was driving.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there, and that's not all. Soon after Donna's murder, Mark was sent away.
We had told you that he left town. What we also need to tell you is that he was a rising senior in high school. So he was actually sent out of town before his senior year of high school. So he didn't even get to graduate with his friends. So that's how nobody would want to leave home before their senior year of high school.
Well, he got sent to Florida first with his dad. And then he finished, I guess, his senior year there and then went into the military and ended up in Germany. So there was no way they could question him. There was no way they could get to him. It all happened, and he's been protected this whole time. I mean, even in the paper, it just says her boyfriend from an affluent family.
Mark comes from a prominent family in Newport, and part of how Robert described Newport is a few families sort of running the town. Could you make the argument that maybe his family just thought he'd be too distracted by the case and the small town gossip, since he was the boyfriend of the murder victim? Maybe. It's still just something that makes you have pause. Time has not softened Mark. He refuses to speak with the cousins or get involved to help in the search of his ex-girlfriend's killer. And according to Stephanie, he won't even pass out flyers. In recent years, Robert noticed something when visiting the tomb of Donna, something that was missed for decades by everyone else. At the bottom corner, there was a small sketched-in heart with Mark's initials in it, which is just interesting. And if you're already a little suspicious of Mark, this isn't going to help.
He was an acquaintance, if not a friend, with Gregory Allen during that time.
Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
If you consume a lot of true crime content, the name might be jumping right out at you. Or you might recognize it but not be able to place it. Where you might have heard it from is the Netflix docuseries Making a Murderer. Now, that show has such a true crime fan cult following that there are subreddits dedicated to hashing out the case, and honestly, shout out to the Reddit community because it linked me to a lot of sources on Gregory Allen. The very abbreviated overview of the Making a Murderer docuseries is that it focuses on a man named Stephen Avery. He was convicted based on victim identification in 1985 of a brutal rape of a woman named Penny, who was raped and beaten while jogging along a lakefront beach in Wisconsin. Later DNA testing excluded Stephen Avery from committing this crime and instead connected the case to none other than Gregory Allen, a violent sexual predator who had been in jail since 1995 for another rape and assault and was serving a 60-year sentence. By the time DNA exonerated Avery in 2003, he had already served 18 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. What's worse is that there was plenty of indication that Gregory Allen should have been on the radar for this crime because he was already under surveillance by law enforcement at the time of Penny's attack. And this was because of his escalating disturbing behavior, like exposing himself, what today we'd call stalking, but it wasn't labeled it that back then, peeping Tom behavior, and attempts at breaking and entering. He also had a ton of run-ins with law enforcement for other crimes. When I went through his arrest record and attached corresponding reports, just from Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, it was 161 pages long. Avery landed back in prison a few years later after he was charged and convicted of another murder, and he remains there to this day with people all over the internet debating his guilt or innocence. But focusing on Gregory Allen for a moment, he is a really violent person. Gregory Allen was in the military, and that's why he lived in the area at the time in 1975. And yes, he ran in the same social circle with Mark and others. Over the years, the cousins have been able to piece together that Mark and Gregory Allen were in the local drug trade together, and that the area had a deeper drug problem than the local community probably realized when they get nostalgic about their small town.
I don't think most people in Newport that lived around there in the 80s or 90s really knew how prevalent the drug trade was in Newport. Everybody thought it was a small, quiet town. So now you start digging a little deeper and peeling back some layers, and you realize that there was a seedy undertone to the town.
The drug issue still exists today, just like in most towns, and within that lies corruption. For example, in 2010, there was a bombshell arrest of 2 Carteret County Sheriff's deputies who pled guilty to aiding and abetting embezzlement. Carteret County Sheriff Ralph Thomas ordered his deputies to engage in a scheme that allowed him to take money. Thousands of dollars were withdrawn between 1997 and 2006 from official accounts maintained by the sheriff's office. According to reporting by WRAL News, when drug detectives would complain that they were receiving less than the full amount requested for an undercover operation, one of the deputies who took part in the scheme would say, "Daddy had to get his cut." Ugh, gross. I hate it. While that is not connected directly to Donna's case, and of course that was years later, it's just an example of how messy things can get in a small town with drugs. Gregory Allen was allegedly a low-level dealer. In fact, Gregory Allen would later get busted on drug charges not long after Donna's murder and serve a little over a year in prison for that. Beverly remembered a time when Donna made a meal for Mark, and Gregory Allen had stopped by, and he absolutely flipped out because she hadn't made food for him. Even more disturbing, though, a couple of nights before Donna's murder, Gregory Allen was allegedly at Grace's Grill and was bothering Donna and her friend she was there with.
Gregory Allen was there at Grace's, and he kept, from her, per her friend, he kept bothering them, and they weren't comfortable with it, so they had him kicked out. And he made a notion, he looked at Donna and made a notion and went like this.
The motion was one of cutting one's throat. So now you have Gregory Allen, who we know from later crimes that I'll get into more, that he is a violent sexual predator. He has this ego moment of being kicked out of a hangout spot for being creepy, and now he's visibly threatening Donna and her friend. But even table that for a moment, because Donna was also in danger for another reason. In interviewing locals and from Beverly's memory, Donna knew a lot about this drug operation, including where the drugs were kept.
Well, and Donna knew where he kept it.
Yeah, Donna did know where he kept it.
Tell her where he kept it.
In the woods where Donna was found.
Yeah. And if she was getting ready to break up with Mark, Mark knew that she knew about this operation and was a liability.
And not only did her boyfriend know that she knew, but Gregory Allen knew that she knew.
After Donna's body was found, Gregory Allen continued his odd behavior. He was already on police's radar just because he was kind of a local menace. But what he did next really brought him to the forefront of this crime.
After Donna was found, he tried to come through the trail, was stopped by law enforcement. So he walked all the way around and tried to come up the other way in front of her house to look at her in the ditch, but he got stopped. He ended up being at her funeral, her viewing, standing outside her home, looking directly at her window, just very obsessed in a way of Donna and her death and surrounding all of that.
Yeah, what the heck? The hairs on the back of my neck just keep standing up. And remember that girl who Donna was with that night that Gregory Allen was kicked out of the bar?
And then he would torment this other girl. Like, she had a restraining order against him. He was found laying under her bed.
Gregory Allen continued this behavior as he moved out of state to Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. I don't want to get too far sidetracked with him and focus this whole episode on him, but I do think it's important to talk about how his crimes escalated and compare that to the murder of Donna. After his stint in jail for drug charges, he was arrested a number of times for things in the 80s and early 90s, including burglary, multiple times of driving without a license, writing bad checks, retail theft, you name it. But what he was really known for was his creepy and predatory sexual behavior. He would expose himself. One of the times he approached a young teen waiting for the school bus, and he had his penis exposed. He told her she could just touch it if she wanted, and then told her that if she did, he would stop coming around. Many, many, many times he was seen peeking in windows. He would get caught in the act by law enforcement at times, but he would still just get a slap on the wrist. In 1984, he followed two teens on their bikes around a neighborhood, and they kept trying to ditch him and turn on these different roads, and he would follow them. And they ended up going back to their house, or at least one of the girls' houses, and so he knew where it was. And around 1 a.m., the teen noticed the man peeking in the window. She ran to tell her mother, and he then approached the window of her mother and whispered "hi" through the window, and then attempted to break in the back door. Just awful. He had another case where a woman kept reporting a prowler, and then he showed back up and tried to break in her front door. Police were so concerned for her safety that they ended up giving her this panic button because they felt she was in so much danger. But still, even with all of that, he kept evading consequences. According to one source, in 1983, he actually lunged at a woman on the same beach he'd go on to attack Penny in 1985. He was just engaging in this lewd sexual behavior. And when talking to Donna's cousins, they told me that he liked to jog on the beach right there in North Carolina when he lived there. And they believe he's tied to a rape case there as well, but he's never faced any consequences for it. In fact, by the time he was tied to Penny's case in 2003, the statute of limitations had run out for rape, and so he couldn't be charged with it. How gross is that? But by that point, his behavior had escalated, and he had been entering into women's homes, and by 1995, he was finally caught and put away for a violent rape and attack on a woman. He actually was arrested for similar crimes in Minnesota and Wisconsin, but he's serving concurrent sentences in Wisconsin. And while he's in jail for a 60-year sentence, he's already come up for parole and been denied, but still, he's eligible for parole at times. He's a dangerous man. A lot of his repeated behavior was to move pieces of furniture or outdoor things to step on top of to better peek in windows. And so people would wake up the next day and be like, why is my picnic bench moved under this bedroom window? He'd stalk women for days or weeks or months, and he would drop hints to tell the women that he'd done so. It seems like he kind of got off on the fact that he'd been watching these women and they had no idea, and then the fear that would come out of them when they found out. One time he told a woman he had been watching her for years. Another, he described an outing she had gone on and a car she left in only a week prior. One time he stole a bra off a clothesline, and then he called the woman and said, "You're in trouble. I took your bra off the clothesline. Go check." He ended up calling back and said, "I've been watching you." So just absolutely terrifying and nightmare fuel. I'm going to share some photos of police documents on my Instagram at SimplerTimeCrimePod. And one of them is where a cellmate of Gregory Allen's came forward and said that Gregory Allen confessed to a North Carolina murder in 1975. In the meantime, I'll summarize it a bit here. So in the early 80s and around 1983, it was the end of 1983, this person came forward who was an inmate in the Manitowoc County Jail, and he requested to talk to detectives, and he said that Gregory Allen admitted that he was involved in a homicide somewhere in North Carolina in 1975, that Gregory Allen personally told him that he killed someone because he figured the individual was either a narcotic officer or drug informant. Interestingly enough, and I don't know any other detail about this, about who his girlfriend was at the time, but in this report, it does say that whoever Gregory Allen's live-in girlfriend was at the time also had knowledge of this murder. So detectives spent a fair amount of time. Manitowoc County reached down to state police in North Carolina, and there was a fair bit of back and forth to try to figure out where Gregory Allen had lived prior and what they could be talking about, what murder they could be talking about. And eventually they land on the probable one. About a week or two later, there was another telephone communication, and that time someone from Carteret County Sheriff's Office spoke to Manitowoc County up in Wisconsin. And this person was a little off because they said, "Oh yeah, I remember there was a 16-year-old girl who was strangled." And you'll remember that Donna was only 15, but they said there was a 16-year-old girl who was strangled. Gregory Allen was the main suspect, but due to difficulties, we weren't ever able to charge him. Those same pair of detectives had a conversation the very next day again, where at that time he said, "Nope, I have all the actual details now. I was a little bit off. This was a 15-year-old female. And that it took place on June 16th, 75, and that the female was found the following day on 6/17. The 15-year-old victim had been strangled to death by an unknown assailant, and she was known to associate with people who used drugs and was suspected that she herself smoked marijuana. Gregory Allen was in the area where the incident took place the night before the body was found and also returned to the same area the following day." And so, that coincides with what the cousins were telling me, that Gregory Allen showed back up and tried to come to the crime scene the next day. Donna's cousins learned from Ruff Tomlinson that he firmly believed Gregory Allen was responsible for Donna's murder, though there's no indication if he ever shared if he thought that Gregory Allen worked alone or not. Ruff Tomlinson allegedly also obtained a confession from Gregory Allen, but it fell through.
He had mentioned to me and my mom that he had gotten a confession from Gregory Allen. He went out there to have Gregory sign the papers to the confession, and Gregory refused to see him.
He actually did confess the crime to a cellmate in Wisconsin. And this got back to the Newport Police Department. And when we talk about the Newport Police Department done anything, I like to say they really haven't done anything maybe since Ruff Tomlinson, who was the chief, retired, because he hounded the case and hounded Gregory Allen. He was the one who arrested Gregory Allen when he went to prison. And I talked to his daughter, and she tells me that, he was definitely afraid of airplanes. But when Gregory Allen offered a confession to him, he actually got on a plane with an FBI agent, and they flew to Wisconsin, to the prison. And obviously when they got to the prison, Gregory Allen wouldn't speak with him. So kind of want to get that out there, that he kind of made it his life's mission to try to solve her case before he retired, because it really nagged at him.
Manipulative cat and mouse behavior from a seasoned criminal, something we've seen time and again. Now, you'll recall Donna was not sexually assaulted, so Stephanie has always been troubled by how far Donna's crime has deviated from Allen's MO. But there are many directions you can go with that.
I've said from the beginning that if Gregory Allen was the one that murdered her, it doesn't fit his profile. Mm-hmm. I've said that from the beginning because, and I'm not saying he didn't, I'm saying me and Robert were talking, and Robert said, well, maybe he was trying to rape her and she's such a small girl, that he accidentally strangled her. And I said, that is a possibility. But I also have to think that he wasn't alone, that maybe whoever was in this drug ring, she saw something she shouldn't, and it was an order given.
Obviously, anybody I've mentioned in this episode is innocent until proven guilty, but there are a lot of signs that point in a certain direction. One direction Stephanie, Beverly, and Robert want them to point away from, once and for all, is Donna's mother, Emily. People in the town were cruel to Emily after the murder. And at first, she'd power through it and she'd have some good days. But slowly, the family witnessed her fall into a deep depression and a life of reclusive behavior.
I want corrected that my Aunt Emily did not murder her child. That is a rumor that has been going on. And listen, when Donna was murdered, they didn't just take Donna's life. They took Aunt Emily's life. They took her siblings' life. Their whole entire life was never the same. My Aunt Emily, she went from going to Thanksgiving dinner and smiling and being happy to uh, uh, being recluse into her home where she wouldn't even open the door. She dealt with threats. She dealt with people leaving notes on her clothesline, threatening the family. They cut her brakes.
Yes, you heard that right. I had to cut the next piece of audio out because I audibly gasped when they said that. Somebody in town cut Emily's brakes and nobody ever investigated it.
Aunt Emily died of depression. She was not herself before cancer.
No, she died on her kitchen floor on a mattress.
Let that sink in. This woman was harassed so much by the small town she lived in and had such grief in the unsolved murder of her daughter that she shut out everybody, including her own family. She struggled with depression and mental illness and eventually developed cancer and died alone, sleeping on a mattress on her kitchen floor.
Yeah, she was a nurse, right? She was an RN.
No, she was an LPN.
Or an LPN. And so she still worked because I remember her when I was a young child, coming to Thanksgiving dinner and stuff like that. So she still had good days during the holidays. But she just slowly just withdrew herself. And then the last time we saw her is when my mom's brother was in a car accident and passed away, and they went and got her. And she came to the hospital with the family. And that was the last time we saw her, right? She wouldn't answer the door after
No,
that.
she wouldn't answer the door.
We'd go to check on her and knock on the door, and she wouldn't come to the door after that. And it was just very, very.
Donna's siblings were never the same either. While Stephanie wants to emphasize that there is no indication that David was at Grace's grill or saw anyone go into the woods that night, she does want to emphasize that he did know something that haunted him because he lived his life terrified.
I do want to clarify that something during that time David did witness, or he found out later, or something, because he was absolutely terrified up until his adult age of something that happened that night. He just never disclosed what that was. So there's something there. It's just not what they put in the paper.
And this came back up a little later in the interview.
Her younger brother, the one that they say watched her go into the woods, would sleep in his bed with tools. He was terrified.
He would sleep with a crescent wrench with the lights on.
Terrified. And then when he was an adult, I was a younger child, but I was there and I remember it. He was at our home and he had been drinking, and my mom was asking him about Donna. She was trying to have a conversation with him. And he looked at my mom and he said, "I can't tell you anything. They will kill me."
Stephanie went to try to find David when she started looking back into Donna's case, and what she found out was devastating. He had died just 3 months prior to her digging back into the case. Donna's brother Michael died of a heart attack in 2022, just a week after the State Bureau of Investigation interviewed him again in relation to his sister's case. And around that time as well, Donna's little baby sister also died. Remember, if Donna were still alive today, she would only be in her mid-60s. All of her siblings were younger than her, and all of them have died. Part of this is why Donna's cousins feel so much responsibility in stepping up and keeping her case out there and pushing for resolution. Stephanie keeps in regular contact with NCIS and the State Bureau of Investigation. She does feel like they are working hard behind the scenes on Donna's case, but they need people to come forward. She found out they do have DNA evidence that they're doing their best to work with now, 50 years later. And patience is the name of the game in figuring out where the forensic evidence could lead. Stephanie is hoping to raise some more funds to get a billboard back up in the area and offer a substantial reward for information. In summary, here are some other items the cousins really want to make sure listeners know about her case. Number 1, there has been a rumor about Donna and drug use. In fact, you heard earlier the cousins talking about how she just used marijuana, and that stemmed from me asking about an autopsy report. There was a mention of a needle mark in her arm, and one particular episode of where this case was featured, there was a podcaster featuring it, and they focused a lot on this. But Stephanie said she spoke to medical professionals and showed them the autopsy report, and this is what she found out.
And I went to a friend of mine that is a nurse, and I said, can you please read this in medical terms and explain to me what this is saying? And what she said is that it was superficial. There was nothing, there was no mark in the vein. It could have been from a doctor's appointment she had a day or two before, so it was healed, all except for that small mark, which would have left a few little bruises or the blood spots or whatever. It didn't say bruises, but there was like blood spots around it, which made it sound like it had just happened.
Mm-hmm.
But her toxicology report showed it was clean. There was nothing in her system. So that's kind of where I was going with it. Like, just stop with the idea that she was doing drugs, that she did drugs that night and went out of control. And then, the person choked her and whatever he kind of went with. And I was like, there's no evidence of any of that. She could have went to the doctor and we just were never able to get those doctor's records. She could have maybe tried to do something that night and decided, never mind, I don't want to. Somebody could have been trying to shoot her up and she fought them off and they were never able to get it in her arm. There's so many different scenarios there, but every single person I have talked to, I don't know if it came up with the people that Robert has talked to, but not one single person has ever said that Donna would do anything other than marijuana.
So while Stephanie appreciates people looking into the case and offering up new angles, she really wants to put that one to bed. Second, and very unrelated, they're also hoping that someone might have a photo of Gregory Allen from the 1975 timeframe. The earliest they could find was in the 80s, about a decade after Donna's murder. And here's why that's so important to them.
If we're talking national audience, I've talked to a lot of people that recognize pictures, but they don't necessarily recognize names. I'll ask them, did you know this person? Well, I'm not sure. Then I'll show them a picture. Oh, yeah, I remember him. We do not have a picture of Gregory Allen from 1975. We've reached out to the DA, tried to find some mug shots, and so far nothing. So somebody somewhere has to have a picture. Because we would like to be able to ask people around Newport, you may not remember the name Gregory Allen, but do you remember this picture? And they may say, oh, yeah, he used to hang around Grice's or that kind of stuff. That would, maybe for a national reach, it'd be nice if somebody somewhere, or even an internet sleuth that's maybe better than I am, could find a photo.
Military photo or something.
Well,
so internet sleuths of the world and Making a Murderer fans, here's your chance. If you find this picture, this elusive picture that they are trying to find, please DM me or send it to my email, simplertimecrimepod@gmail.com, and I'll make sure this gets to Robert. The third thing is, if you are the little girl who found Donna that day, the day of her murder, and you were the one that found her in the ditch, if you're willing to talk, please get in touch. The cousins would really like to speak with you too. They believe you'd be in your late 50s now at the time of this recording in 2025. Lastly, this is a worldwide podcast. Because this was a military town, many people have relocated. Donna's family hopes that the exposure this gets might jog people's memories who have since moved away from the area. So share, share, share.
I would just say, obviously people share everything they come up with. Whether it's, your podcast, another podcast, anything that we, have her flyer that has the SBI, NCIS. I've got her on TikTok, Instagram, like all the social media, Twitter. I've got her everywhere. So if you come across her flyer, please share it with a link to your podcast. Whatever they can do to, just because when you look at the scheme of things, it's been 50 years. Somebody could be living in Utah. They moved out of here and they have information. And unless it's reaching them, they're not going to think about it, or they're not going to know where to go. They're not going to know that we're still working this case. So we want to get it nationwide if it's not already. We want it nationwide. We want everybody to know Donna's name, know who Donna was, and push forward to help us get people to talk. There's got to be somebody out there, because at the end of the day, we've come to the conclusion that the person that took her life may not even be alive. We want to see justice. We want to see that person go to prison and get due time before their life ends. But if that doesn't happen, at least we have closure. We know what happened. We know who took her life, and we that's just what we want at the end of the day, right? We want closure.
Well, what we also have, and some of the people I've been able to track down, the classmates, I've tracked them down to New Jersey, Virginia, pretty much all over, is that a lot of her friends and people who lived in that area in 1975 were military families, children of military families that do not live in Newport anymore. They have moved on. And so there may be people who were around in 1975 in Newport that now live all across the country because of their military background. So these national podcasts may help reach those people that wouldn't see it in a local newspaper or a Facebook page or something like that.
Exactly.
I asked all three of them what they would say to someone who knows something but has been too scared to come forward.
For me personally, I would say that the SBI and the NCIS, you can go to them anonymously, and your name is not on any files. Nobody has to know that you went to them. They can meet you in a place that is not even in the area that you're comfortable with. But at this point, a lot of the people are elderly. They're elderly. That was about around that time. I don't think the fear should be as big as it was back then. Because a lot of those people are no longer here, and the ones that are, I mean, what are they really going to do? I would just like to encourage people to just take advantage of that and talk to the SBI and just do it anonymously and meet them in a location that you're comfortable with, even if it's an hour away, 2 hours away. They're willing to do that.
Stephanie and I have kind of put ourselves out there publicly as pursuing the case and calling people out. And I've sat in stepfather's living room and had a conversation with him about this case and told him my theories, and he gave me his theories. But what I would like to say is, to my knowledge, I mean, I speak for me, I've had no threats made against me for my involvement in the case. I don't know that Stephanie has had any personal threats. So if the powers that be aren't threatening us, then I don't see why they would threaten anybody who would come forward with information that would help solve the case. So don't be a coward.
Robert's sentiment resonated with Beverly as well.
Don't be a coward. If you ever spend a minute of a day of her lifetime with her and she be anything to you, speak up because she deserves it.
I want to thank Stephanie, Beverly, and Robert for helping me put together this episode. I truly could not have told Donna's story without you. If you have any information on the murder of Donna Emmel in 1975, please contact the State Bureau of Investigation at 919-662-4500. You can also contact Crime Stoppers anonymously at 726-INFO, and I'll share the NCIS poster on our Instagram. This has been another episode of A Simpler Time True Crime. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, please leave a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth helps this podcast grow and reach more people. Case suggestions can be sent to simplertimecrimepod@gmail.com. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and tune in next Monday for another episode.
Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home, and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.